Hello good people. In this lesson video, I'm interested in showing you how to find the reference angle. How to find the reference angle. Now, what are some of the important things that you need to know before finding the reference angle? It's the definition of what the reference angle is actually. So we start by defining the reference angle. So we're saying a reference angle, which is angle theta represent an angle, is the angle between the x-axis and the terminal side or ray. Now, this is not the first time you are hearing the word terminal or the reference, because I remember in my previous video I had demonstrated on how you can find the reference angle using when the terminal point is drawn. So in this lesson, we are actually going to find the reference angle by simply using this terminal side or ray. So it is the angle that is in between x-axis and the terminal ray or terminal side. So meaning this terminal ray, you are supposed to draw it, okay, in order for you to come up with the reference angle. It is always less than 90. It's between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. So no matter how big the angle is that you have been given, and if you are told to find the reference angle, just know that it will be between 0 to 90 degrees. It cannot be greater than this. Angles are measured in an anti-clockwise direction. Now remember, most of the times angles we find them in clockwise direction, but in this case angles are measured in anti-clockwise direction like this. That's how we measure angles. So you need to note the following in order for you to be able to find the reference angle. Note, if you have an angle in quadrant 1, the reference angle is equal to the angle in quadrant 1. So let's say, for instance, if in quadrant 1 we have an angle of, find the reference angle of angle 30 degrees. Now 30 is in between 0 to 90 degrees. So the reference angle will be 30. 60 degrees, the reference angle will still be 60. 70 degrees, the reference angle will still be 70. That's what they mean here. Okay, so if you have the angle in quadrant 2, remember, if the angle is in quadrant 2, it simply means that that angle is big. Okay, so we have 90 degrees there, 0 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270. Then we have 360 degrees. So in quadrant 1 here, these angles, the reference angle will simply be the same angle. But when we move on to this is quadrant 1, but if we move on to quadrant 2, angles are bigger than 90 degrees. So in this case, we need to know the formula. What formula should I use in order for me to find the angle? So the formula to use here is very simple. It's simply 180 minus the angle that you have been given in quadrant 2. So the angle, let's say if it is 270 or 100, that 100 is bigger than 90. So you just have to say 180 minus 100. Okay, then you have your reference angle. Then we move on to the next concept, which is simply says, if you have the angle in quadrant 3, so this is quadrant 3, if the angle is in quadrant 3, the only concept you need to remember is the angle itself minus 180. Okay, the angle itself minus 180. Now this angle is greater than 180. That's one thing you should know. The angle in quadrant 3 is greater than 180. So it can be maybe 270 or 210, 220, 230. So this angle is greater than 180. So we just have to subtract that angle given minus 180. Then you have the reference angle. Now, then the last one, if the angle is in quad 4, the only thing you need to do is simply subtract 360 minus the angle in quad 4. So this is our quad 4. So here we just say 360 minus the angle that you have been given. So if we know this concept, then it means that we can easily find any answer that we have been given. So 360 minus the angle, and here we have 180 minus angle given minus 180. Here in quad 2, we have 180 minus the angle given. So one thing you should know is that in quad 1, all the angles are equal to the angle that is given. The reference angle is equal to the same angle given. Okay. So when you have this knowledge, then you can come now to looking at the coterminal angles. Now, coterminal angles, these are angles that have the terminal point on the same side. Okay, so for instance, if we are talking of a negative angle, for you to find the reference angle of that negative angle, just add that to 360, and you have the angle which is coterminal to the which will be a positive angle. So when it's a positive angle, you can easily find the reference angle. So now let's look at the examples. Okay, let's look at the examples now. Let's look at the example. Let us find the reference angle, find the reference angle of 120 degrees. So to find the reference angle of 120 degrees, all you need to do is to draw remember we are dealing with the Cartesian plane here, the Cartesian graph. So we will just draw the Cartesian graph just there, like that. We know that this is our x, our y, this will be our x. Then we said that in order for you to come up with the reference angle, it's simply from this question, we're saying it's the angle in between the x-axis and the terminal side. So when you look at this, we have 90 degrees there, 0 degrees, 180, and 270 degrees. Now, when you look at the angle which we have been given, is 120. 120 is the angle which is greater than 90. And obviously 120 cannot be found in quadrant 1, but it can be found in quadrant 2 because it's less than 180. So we are going to draw what we call a terminal point. From this origin, we just draw a terminal point, which is this straight line like that. Once you draw it, then the angle, that is the reference angle. It's the angle in between the x-axis and the terminal point. So the x-axis is this one. So the angle that they are talking about is this angle which is here. This is the angle theta. This is the reference angle we are finding. But from 0 all the way to this terminal point, it is 120 degrees. Hope you are following. So in order for us to find the reference angle, we can see clearly that we just have to subtract 180 minus 120. Then we have this angle, because we know the whole of this line will add up to 180 degrees. So to find the reference angle now, we are simply going to say, to find this reference angle, it will be 180 degrees minus, remember, minus the angle that is in quadrant, so meaning that it will be 120 degrees. So the reference angle now, the reference angle is going to be what? When we subtract this to what do we get? We are going to have 60 degrees. So 60 degrees. So 60 degrees is our reference angle. And you can see 60 is less than 90, proving the statement saying that the reference angles are always less than 90 degrees. Okay, and it's always, they are always between 0 to 90 degrees. Hence, this angle was 120, but this reference angle is 60 degrees. So no matter how big the angle will be, the reference angle will always be less than 90 degrees. So this is one way you can find this angle. So now let's find a negative. Let's find the one which has a negative point. Let's say let's find the reference angle. Let's find the reference angle of, okay, negative 150 degrees. So to find the reference angle of negative 150, we need to look at this condition here. Coterminal angles, to obtain the coterminal angle, we just have to add the negative angle to 360. So one thing we shall do is that we are going to draw, before we continue, this is a negative angle. And if we have, this is our graph, this is 0 degrees, and this is 90, 180, 270. Now 150, if we go anti-clockwise, this anti-clockwise, it is positive angles. But when we go anti-clockwise is positive angles, but when you go clockwise, this is where we're going to find angle 150. And angle 150, it is found in the quadrant of 4. It's in quadrant 4. This quadrant 2, 150, because it's less than 180 in other case. So we need to find a positive angle in order for us to find the reference angle. So how do we find the positive angle? We are simply going to say negative 150 plus 360. Okay, negative 150 plus 360. So that is how we find the code. This is a concept which is being explained here. So we do this concept to find the positive angle. When we find the positive angle, that's when we can find the reference angle. So what is the answer when we subtract that? What do we get? We have negative 150 minus 360, we have 210. Okay, so 360, in other case, we can say 360 minus 150. Okay, 360 minus 150, we have 210. So we have 210. Okay, so the reference angle in this case will just be, in order for us to find the reference angle, now that we know the positive value, okay, we know the positive value, this one, okay, which will be 150 minus 360, which will give us 210. So 210 is found in quadrant what? 210 is in quadrant 3. If we look very well, we'll start from this side. This is quadrant 3 here. This is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, and quadrant 3, then quadrant 4. When we talk of negative 150, we'll start from here, going to this side. And negative 150, it will be in this quadrant, which is quadrant 3, because we will assume that this is 90 and this is 180. So we'll reach here, 150. And with the positive angle for negative 150, it is actually 210, which is in quadrant 3. So we're just going to draw the terminal point just here. So we draw the terminal point to show that this is where angle 210 or negative 150 going to be. Then, because we know the concept says that to find the reference angle, the angle should be in between the x and the terminal side. So the x-axis is this is the x-axis. So the angle they're talking about is this one here. So this is where angle theta is going to be, the reference angle. So what are we going to do in order for us to find the reference angle? The concept is simple now. What does the concept says in quadrant 3? So the concept here says that if you have an angle in quadrant 3, reference angle is simply found by subtracting the angle that you have been given minus 180. So here we are just going to say the angle that we have been given, we know it is 210. This is the angle we have found. So we're going to say 210 minus 180. 210 minus 180. Therefore now we have our reference angle to be what is the answer? 30 degrees. So 30 degrees will be our reference angle. Now you can see that the reference angle is less than 90 degrees. Despite the angle being big, the reference angle, it is still less than 90 degrees. So this is how you work out reference angles. So with this knowledge, our next video will focus on now graphing the graphing the sine, the cos, and the tan, okay, curve on a Cartesian plane, and also solving the trigonometric equations. Okay, so don't miss this the next video, because it will be of good value in order for you to answer paper 1 questions. So these questions come mostly in paper 1, not in paper 2. That is the Zambian curriculum, mathematics. All right, so we end here, and hoping that I've made it clear, and this is straightforward. So the next video will be more of different concept, but we are building on whatever we have learned. For now, it's a bye-bye.